Welcome to the show. I am so excited to have joining me today Dr. Ellen Wong. She is here to talk to us today about how we can overcome our high functioning anxiety and prioritize our happiness as much as our success. Thank you so much, Ellen, for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jessica.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you, a Dr. Ellen, actually, I should
Oh, no,
say.
no, Ellen's fine.
And not only are you a doctor in your field and very passionate about helping women to overcome their anxiety and really increase their happiness, but you're also a mom. And how old is your daughter now, Ellen? I know you recently had her.
So she's 14. She just turned 14 months old.
Hmm.
So she's my first.
Hmm.
Lots of new mom things to learn, really steep
Mm.
learning curve.
Mhm. And is that sort of what having your baby so recently, is that sort of what led you down this path to wanting to help women, or is this something you started long ago? How did you get into this field?
It's something that I started really, really long ago, actually.
Mm.
It's I feel so I've always been drawn to kind of working with women
Hmm.
and like you mentioned with the high functioning anxiety, and that has a lot to do with kind of my struggle
Mm.
way early on. Is it okay if I share a little bit
Oh,
about that right
please. Yeah,
now?
we would love to hear from you about it.
So, like really early on in my career, I was dealing with a lot of issues and going on in my life, whether it's personal, professional, and
Hmm.
etc. And it really hit me quite badly. And I remember it escalated to a point where my mind never stopped. It was just this like
Mm.
constant churning and churning and churning and churning. And I was having difficulty sleeping. And, I did a lot of things from a naturopathic perspective that
Hmm.
helped me. And I also, I was definitely feeling very, very anxious, but I just didn't really fit the
Hmm.
diagnosis of anxiety.
Hmm.
And this is kind of how I discovered high functioning anxiety as a thing. And what it really is at the end of the day, like somebody with high functioning anxiety is somebody who is fairly kind of like that successful overachiever where on the
Mm.
outside you're feeling you seem very put together and calm and confident, but
Hmm.
internally you're really struggling. So a
Mm.
lot of self-doubt, a lot of like what ifs, a lot of having trouble saying no to people, people pleasing, and you're just like
Hmm.
mentally and physically exhausted. And that's kind of what I was struggling with. And I remember going to see my doctor, and he was actually quite reluctant to give me anti-anxiety medications because one of the really interesting things about anxiety is that technically to be diagnosed with anxiety, you have to have something called a functional impairment, which is just a really like fancy, kind of not very nice sounding medical term for the fact that your anxiety symptoms have to interfere with your life.
Mm.
The problem with somebody with high functioning anxiety is that you're exactly that. You're high functioning. So
Hmm.
you're feeling really anxious, but it's not like
Mm.
interfering with your life. It's not making me so debilitated that I can't go to work. Like I'm actually, as if anything, the anxiety is pushing me to work even harder.
Like it just stays mental as sort of.
Yeah,
Hmm.
even physically, I could feel like the heart palpitations, but the thing is, it doesn't
Mm.
stop me from doing things.
I
It
see.
actually pushes me to do even more. And what
Hmm.
ended up happening was this vicious cycle of feeling the anxiousness from not feeling good enough, from people pleasing, from not being
Mm.
able to say no, not like all the self doubt. And it would make me compensate by working more. And it
Hmm.
got to the point where I was running on 80 hours a week, not really
Wow.
taking care of myself. And then I just ended up in the hospital twice for like
Hmm.
burnout related symptoms.
Hmm.
And that's when I really started digging into what this high functioning, like I just wanted to find out what it was. And I think there's a time and place for medication, but for me, that's not what I wanted because it didn't
Uh-huh.
feel right. And it wasn't even related to side effects or anything that it's just, I knew that it wasn't going to be the
Mm.
solution.
You wanted to treat the root cause
Yeah, like I wanted
within
to know
yourself.
what it was, and very quickly I realized like I definitely tried taking it to see if it would
Hmm.
help. I did a lot of like naturopathic stuff to eat better
Hmm.
and exercise and learn how to sleep better, and all of this stuff really helped. Like to be really
Hmm.
honest, it did help. It helped me feel calmer. It definitely had me eating healthier. I learned how to manage kind of my lifestyle to help
Hmm.
support me, but the one thing that it didn't help with is the thoughts that went on in my head.
Mm. The sort of
And this
loops and cycles that you
yes,
can't. Hmm.
because you can't you can't eat a certain diet and get rid of the thoughts. You
Hmm.
can't take a pill and get rid of the thoughts. It doesn't matter if the pill's natural or pharmaceutical.
Hmm.
Like you really have to have a whole holistic approach. to dealing with high functioning anxiety. And one, it's that lifestyle piece, it's the diet, the exercise, the sleeping, and all of that kind of stuff. But
Mm,
on the flip side, it's also managing what's going on in your mind. And fundamentally, the thoughts we tell ourselves is what takes away our happiness and our sense of calm, which I know you
mm-mm.
talk a lot about with your
Yes.
guests and people you work with. But like, again, like if you're mentally all day long thinking about how I'm not good enough, I'm not
Mhm,
worthy, it's me, I always do
mhm.
things wrong, like feeling guilt, like all of those things, like
Mhm.
how could you
Yeah.
possibly feel calm and happy?
And something that you're saying that really resonates with me as well is the stories that we're telling ourselves and how we're shaping that. And
Yes.
because even this morning, as I was getting ready for this podcast, I was thinking about sort of a personal issue that I'm dealing with. And I was sort of telling myself, so like even it was sort of not subconscious, but I was just doing other activities and cleaning. But at the same time, my mind is kind of thinking, okay, what has been going on the last 6 months or so? And okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I'm sort of telling myself the story and I'm caught in this loop as I'm like doing these mundane tasks. And then I sort of caught myself and I said, like, why am I keep obsessing about these things? And I was sort of trying to make the story better or make me feel better about the story of what had happened recently or anything like that. And I think that's the loop that we get caught in a lot. And especially I think women really fall into that high functioning category a lot because we're really good at hiding things and just sort of like
Mm,
putting a brave face on. And I think it affects us a lot more even than some men sometimes,
yeah, I think
especially
you've
and
yeah.
and motherhood also adds to that substantially.
Yeah, you've nailed it. For women, we definitely tend to ruminate more than men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in today's society in particular, where
Mm-hmm.
honestly, if you're a mom and like that's already a full-time job. If
Mm-hmm.
you work on top of that, that's another full-time job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are somehow indoctrinated and like given this script that we're supposed to run where
Mm-hmm.
we are supposed to function really, really well and be really, really put together in
Mm-hmm.
every aspect of
Mm-hmm.
our life. And anything less than that is not good enough. But it's,
Exactly.
it's, a job and being a mom is two full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And you're expecting yourself to run two
Mm-hmm.
full-time jobs and somehow still always be smiling, always have it figured
Mm-hmm.
out, put your kids' best interest at heart and like make every decision perfectly. And it's like on some level, it's not possible. So we hold ourselves to these
Mm-hmm.
really high standards.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like people with high functioning anxiety have a perfectionism thing. And
Yes.
so now you're holding yourself to this really ridiculous standard that it's just not reasonable to reach,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then we get into the loop of feeling guilty and
Mm-hmm.
feeling bad about the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we're not doing as this imagined beautiful job with our kids and we're not doing
Mm-hmm.
this like perfect job at our work
Mm.
and somewhere in there we're supposed to be doing self-care because that's really
Yes.
important, so then all like and then
It,
even
be, it,
not
be, it,
doing.
it becomes a task that we then feel guilty
Yes,
for not doing. And
yes,
it goes back to that pleaser mentality that I think you
yes.
mentioned that kind of goes hand in hand with that high functioning anxiety, perfectionism sort of mentality,
Hmm.
because we don't feel like we're pleasing anyone or pleasing anyone the way we need to, or our children or our boss or whoever it is. And then ourselves were last on the list. But
Yes.
certainly we just, it's a horrible cycle once we get into
Yeah,
this.
it is.
We've
and
all felt
and
it.
it's exactly like what you said. Now self-care is a task and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be enjoying this. Why don't even
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy, like, why don't I enjoy
Mm-hmm.
my bubble bath or like whatever it is? Or
Yes.
I'm sitting here and trying to read a book and my mind's not even into it. And then now you get frustrated, you resent things, and then it just all
Yeah.
builds, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that you actually said is that something about how women get affected by this much more. And it's
Mm.
really interesting you brought that up because oftentimes for women, and this is like a behavioral psychology thing, for
Mm.
women, when we have a thought that we tell ourselves over and over again,
Mhm.
it brings up an emotion. So I'm not good enough is never just I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough comes automatically with guilt and resentment
Mhm.
and fear of what if people don't like me? What if
Mm.
they don't believe in me? Because I'm not good enough, right?
Mhm.
And so all of those emotions, which I actually think men don't necessarily get attached to the emotion as quickly.
Mm.
We as women get attached to the emotion very quickly.
Mhm.
And then you run into the issue of now once an emotion is kind of flipped on, it becomes hard to shake.
Mm-hmm.
because you can tell yourself as much as you want, I am worth it. I am good enough. I am
Mm-hmm.
good enough. Darn it. Like you can say all those things to yourself, but like internally, that guilt and the frustration and the resentment and the shame, like it's still there. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot say enough things to yourself
Mm-hmm.
that can help erase that emotion, if that makes any sense.
So
And
behavioral science really backs that up, that there is a difference specifically on how women interpret the thought and
mhm,
how men interpret the thought, because we automatically come with these emotions that are attached and we can't
yes,
stop them. And it's like a floodgate. It's
yes.
something that's backed by science.
It's very difficult for a woman to change a thought pattern without also changing the emotion underneath. It
Mm-hmm.
becomes really, it's a little bit like if you stick a sticky note in front of the mirror and you go, every day I'm going to say to myself 10 times, I am good enough. I am good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You can keep saying that. Internally, though, there's a conflict because deep down, you don't actually feel it because
Mm-hmm.
you still feel the guilt and the shame and the fear of saying no to other people. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't resolve both, eventually you're just going to stop using that sticky note because it's just going to bug you. Like you don't want to say it to yourself because you don't genuinely believe it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's I think some of the the difficulties in helping women overcome both how they feel and what they're saying to themselves. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
partially why I've done such a deep dive into helping women with these things, because I think those feelings
Mm-hmm.
as well as those thoughts really, really, it really affects people. Like it really, really affects people.
Mm-hmm.
And you could imagine there's no way you can necessarily eat or exercise in a way that gets rid of the feelings of guilt,
Mm. So, what would
right?
you recommend, Dr. Ellen, that we do to kind of attack those underlying feelings that are really sabotaging all of our efforts?
I think one of the first thing is actually 100% getting to know what those are,
Okay.
right? And being able to figure out what's the thought that comes with that emotion. So every one of us feels our emotion a certain way and it's unique to every one of us. So let's say, for example, I'll use your example this morning. You were ruminating about something that happened. I don't know what it was you were telling yourself, but I'm just going to make it up. And I'm going to say you were saying, oh, like, I wish I did this instead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I wish I did this instead, where is that feeling
Mm-hmm.
coming up in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually there's a feeling. We just have to find it. And then we have to find that feeling and then we have to acknowledge where it is in our body. And that is the first step. It's figuring out what the thought is
Mm-hmm.
and then figuring out where the emotion is that is attached to that thought and then being able to pinpoint those. Then I would actually say a lot of women come and tell me things like, oh, I ruminate a lot on things like, oh, I should have said this or I should have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I want to know what's the thought that's underneath that. Because a
Hmm.
lot of people say I should have,
Hmm.
which is fine. It's a limiting belief, but underneath that, what is behind the I should have?
Hmm.
Is it
I'll
I
give.
should have? Yeah, yeah, go.
Well, I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and as you're saying it, I'm recognizing that the thoughts that I'm having, reoccurring and ruminating on them, I think that the underlying emotion is that I'm trying to tell myself that my decisions I made were justified and that I did my best I could.
Mm,
And I think
mhm,
that's a lot of the time, maybe what other women are struggling with is that things that we are interpreting as maybe mistakes or failures or things, we're then ruminating on them, trying to justify that we're really good people. We did the best we could. You know what I mean? Like that's what
mhm,
I'm thinking is I'm thinking of the stories and I'm telling myself and I'm saying to myself, well, yes, this happened, XYZ. And these were the justifications for why I made all those decisions. And I'm trying my best. You know what I mean? So I think
mhm,
that I'm thinking that the emotion behind it could be that I'm trying to feel like I'm a good person, that I'm, or whatever. I'm not sure what emotion, like the word to tag onto it,
mhm.
but just feeling maybe that I'm, trying to increase my self-esteem and justify my actions, things like that.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
didn't know if that might help for your example.
Yeah, so if we can use your thought as an example, you
Hmm,
said I'm trying to justify that I'm a good person.
I think
So if
so.
I were to ask you what what would happen if you were a bad person?
I don't know. I've never thought about that.
How would you feel kind of if somebody said you were a
um,
bad person?
if somebody said I was a bad person,
Mhm.
I would be really, really hurt, and I would take it very, very personal. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure why, because I feel like I should have the confidence level to a point where if somebody says that, I feel confident in who I am and that I know I'm a good person or a good mother or whatever it is, and
Mhm.
that it shouldn't affect me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yet
Mhm.
I feel like it would. It would
Mhm.
really deeply hurt me, is how I would
Mhm.
react.
And I think underlying that is the thought. There's a
Mhm.
thought in there. It could be very, very deep, but there's a thought in there about not being good enough. I'm
Hmm.
not a good person. I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
And so whenever there's a trigger, and there's so many different things, especially being a mom,
Mhm.
it could definitely like trigger that I'm not a good enough mom, or and
Mm.
people are going to judge me if this happens, and therefore
Mhm.
I'm not a good enough person. And like we
Mhm.
tie the mom to who we are, right? So I'm
Yes.
not a good enough mom automatically means as I'm not a good person. They're two
Yes.
very separate things, but like
Mhm.
we tie them together as moms. And so deep down in there, there's a thing where we now have to justify what we do
Mm.
because I'm a good person, darn it. Like look
Mhm.
at all the things that I do. Look at all the things
Mhm.
that I am trying to do. See,
Mhm.
I am a good person. But in having to justify it, it must therefore mean deep down, you
Mm.
have a feeling that you're not good enough because you're
Mhm.
not justifying it to someone else. You're
Yes.
doing it to yourself. You're having the
Mhm.
whole conversation and the whole fight in your own mind. So
That's what
you have
anxiety
already
is, right?
right. And so you've already placed this external person, whoever you've imagined, that
Mhm.
is judging you, and you're trying to talk back to that person and justifying that you are a good person.
Mhm.
If you fully actually believe that you were a good person and that you really were doing everything you could do, this conversation wouldn't happen. You wouldn't need to actually justify yourself. You wouldn't have that internal fight. There would be no
Mm.
need to. It would be such an ingrained belief
Yes.
that it wouldn't matter, right?
Mhm.
Like if something you know as a universal truth, you don't have to fight it. You
Mm.
just kind of go, oh, it is what it is. Like I accept it. I did the best I could. And then that's it.
Mhm.
That's the conversation. It wouldn't keep going.
Mhm.
So deep down, there is a thought of I'm not good enough. And I find that like a lot of women have that. And we
Mhm.
have a tendency, and especially the mom guilt
Mhm.
brings it all up.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I do is using something called Creatrix. So
Mhm.
Creatrix is it's a method that was designed only for women, which is something that I love about it.
Mhm.
It like it doesn't work on men, so it was built based on women's psychology. And what it is that it is a way of being able to find out all of these underlying negative thoughts that kind of drive the limiting beliefs, like
Mhm.
I feel, like that I'm not good enough. Like I'm not loved. I'm not worthy of love. I
Mm.
can't say no because people might think this of me. Like
Yes.
all of those kind of thoughts, it takes those along with the accompanying emotion that it comes with. You can use Creatrix to figure all of these things out. And then Creatrix can help resolve all of that. And the
Mm.
really cool thing about Creatrix is that it is able to draw out that inner wisdom within you in a way that it completely reframes that negative self talk. It
Mm.
completely releases the emotion, and it comes with the guarantee that that thought and emotion will not come back.
Mm.
So if you think about it, you just have to imagine what your life would be like as moms for all of us if we don't think we're not good enough or we're not doing a good enough job.
Mhm.
If we could resolve that completely and we could resolve the mom guilt completely.
Mm.
And that's the great thing about Creatrix is that it offers that outcome guarantee, which I
Mm.
think is a little bit harder to
Yeah.
find.
That's very
Um,
unique.
it
And
is very unique.
And I think when we say mom guilt also, I think people dismiss the term to some degree because we're not really just saying just mom stuff that we're feeling guilty about.
Mm,
It goes back to that piece where you said we're tying our personal identity into motherhood. So for my example, it was about I'm trying to get back into dating is what I was
hmm
thinking about. And
hmm
I'm really, I went on a couple dates and I just felt like I didn't meet the right person. Maybe, and I'm judging myself on the decisions I'm making. Maybe I didn't make the right choices or something. So in my mind, that means, oh, I'm making these wrong choices. I must mean I'm making the wrong choices for my son. And like I'm tying myself into the mom piece.
hmm
So it's that mom guilt that we're talking about. It's not necessarily that we're thinking we didn't feed our kids healthy enough or something mom related. It's just that we tie everything that we're doing into motherhood and we're tying that all into creating this huge thing called mom guilt. And it's not like
Mhm.
just we didn't buy our son the best toy or our child the best thing or something like that. It's just everything makes you feel like a bad mom. And that's where the term mom guilt, I think, is.
Mhm.
So what
Mhm.
you're saying is this sort of creatrix system is a sort of a therapy system that can treat all of those underlying sort of emotions and the anxieties that keep being triggers for us, and like the reoccurring thoughts.
I think you've nailed it completely. I think you raised a really, really good point about the mom guilt. It
Mm,
is, I have definitely heard it being dismissed before. Oh, it's just mom guilt.
yeah.
And you're so right. You've
Mhm.
totally
It
nailed it.
sounds like we're whiners, like we're whining.
Yes.
Oh, we have mom guilt. No,
Yeah.
we're just saying that we're overwhelmed and we have high
Yeah.
functioning anxiety and we don't know how to express that.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Like, and again, it's because I think, like, from like an ancestor to an evolution perspective, like it's just like as a mom,
Mhm.
you everybody wants the best for their children. Nobody, like, I mean, nobody is like, maybe anyways, just like 99.99% of women do not go, I don't really care. I'm just gonna not care about the decisions I
Mm.
make for my kid. Like,
Yeah,
like,
we feel everything's related and we're
yeah.
affecting them. So,
And so
mhm.
everything you do is you want the best for that person. And
Mhm.
then for this child that you brought into the world. And
Mm.
anytime you feel like you can't do the best, whatever you've defined best to be, which I
Mm.
actually think is, the bar's quite high. Like, society sets a ridiculously high bar
Yeah.
for what best is, but we all aim
Mm.
for that best because you
Yeah.
deeply, deeply love the child you brought in, right?
Mhm.
And you want the best. And so if you can't give the best, you now feel guilt. But
Mhm.
now, like I said before, guilt is now that it's been flipped on. And
Yeah.
now everything else in your life, it triggers guilt really easily.
Mm.
I think
Mhm.
prior to becoming a mom, we
Mhm.
have it's less easy to trigger guilt.
Mm. I
Once
think
you've become
yeah.
a mom,
I think you're right, because I'm thinking of even all the moms like working late or working odd hours with the pandemic and working from home. You have a lot of guilt of, well, do I work extra hard and like, succeed in my career so I can support my child better? Or am I not giving my child the time and attention? Whereas if you weren't a mom, it would just be like, you'd just be focused on your own emotion about working late. Oh, I'm so tired. But because you're a mom, everything's associated with the mom guilt piece, is what you're
yes,
saying.
totally. Yeah.
Hmm.
Again, like, perfect example. Before I had Elise, who cares how late like, I mean,
Mm.
it's not great that I work late, but it's like, okay, well, I work
Yeah.
late, so it's just me. At best, it's my partner as well, but then that's also something, like, that's a relationship thing, it's a communication thing, like, I need to do whatever. Even that could be
Mm.
understandable, and I don't think I'd feel necessarily as much guilt. I mean, if I
Hmm.
never spent any time with him, I probably would start feeling guilty, but
Hmm.
like, in the span of one evening, if
Hmm.
I don't spend enough time with Elise, I already feel guilty. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
it's
Yes.
like this, like, it's
Yeah.
elevated somehow. And
Mm.
so with Creatrix, it's not that. And so this is you've brought up a really good example, because it's not like you'll work on, I'm not a good enough mom, and feeling guilty, and then reframing that, and all of a sudden you're going to ignore your child forever. Like, you're just gonna be like, I don't feel guilty anymore, so I'm gonna do whatever the heck I want. Like, I'm gonna leave my child and go on dates. Like, it's not
Yeah.
like that. Like, you're a good human being. You're not gonna, like, leave your child and not care about them.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if you were able to make a decision for your child and
Mhm.
it didn't have the burden of guilt?
Mhm.
If it didn't have the burden of, oh my gosh, like, should I go out because I'm a good mom or not a good mom? If you could
Mhm.
just be like, I am a good mom. I do all of these things for my child.
Mhm.
Taking time for myself is something that I actually need to do. And because
Mhm.
I do want to meet someone and go on dates and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, to be able, okay, so what do I need to set in place to make that happen? I'm going to find somebody really good to take care of my child. I'm going to make sure I give him, lots of love and attention,
Mhm.
before and after.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go out and enjoy my life, because
Mhm.
when I go out and enjoy my life, I actually come back as an even better mom,
Mhm.
because I've taken the time for myself. I can come
Mhm.
back and be more present with my child and be
Mhm.
there and not feel guilty. Because when you feel guilty and you come back, you suddenly, like, overdo things for the kid because you feel guilty.
Mhm.
So you, like,
Yes.
and it's not staple for them either. Like, they don't understand why suddenly you're showering them with extra things and then suddenly it's being
Mhm.
taken. Like, they don't get that. But if
Mhm.
you could go in on even keel and always just kind of be like, no, I'm making the right decision because I'm a
Mhm.
good mom. And, like, what do
Yeah.
I need to do? What do I need to set in
Mhm.
place so that I can go out and do something on my own
Mhm.
without the burden of the
Mm.
emotions?
Mhm.
Wouldn't your life feel a lot easier and a lot
Mm.
calmer?
Absolutely. It sounds like the calm and sort of the confidence is what you're
Hmm.
trying to create within yourself. It's the self-assurance, that calm and that
Yes.
confidence, and that's what's going to combat the high functioning anxiety that we maybe have all been suppressing and all of that,
Mm,
right?
mhm. And
Mhm.
how much happier would you be if you could just go
Mhm.
on this date? not worrying about the guilt,
Yeah.
not worrying about the good enough. Or if you made a decision about that date, whether you want to see that
Yeah.
person or not, or whatever it is, like come back and kind of be like, no, I made that decision to support me the way I want to be
Mhm.
supported and to
Mhm.
give me and my child the life that I want. And so
Mhm.
it's a yes or a no. And then you don't have to think about it again. Like it's
Mhm.
done. Like it's either a yes or a no. And it's that simple. And I think like because as women we ruminate so much, like everything becomes super complicated. And when
Yeah.
everything becomes super complicated and you second guess every decision you make,
Yeah.
that's why we feel so tired all the time. And
Mhm.
that's, I think when you second guess yourself, there is no way you could keep the same level of confidence, because the more you question yourself, the more
Mm.
you lose confidence.
That's
Right. And
true.
the more you feel anxious and you feel all those negative emotions and you feel like you're not confident, the
Mhm.
less happy you are.
Mm.
And the less happy you are, it's a vicious cycle. The worse the decisions you're going to make, because now you're coming from a place of lack, from a
Mm.
place of worry, from a place
Mm.
of fear.
Mm. It makes sense. It's like this ripple effect, and I'm glad we talked about it a lot just now about, what are we talking about when we're talking about anxiety and the mom guilt and the ruminating thoughts and all of these things. And it makes sense to me now that it's really these underlying emotions, and we need to create the calm and the confidence and that self-assurance to combat that. I know you had early on mentioned that one technique is when you are having these sort of feelings and the anxiety feelings, you're supposed to extract from that what is the emotion, and then you said you're supposed to physically think where it is in your body.
Hmm.
What action steps do you recommend, Dr. Allen, that we take when
Hmm.
we feel those anxiety, reoccurring thoughts creeping up on us?
Hmm. For sure. One of the techniques that I recommend is actually being able to either sit or stand. It doesn't actually really matter. Like it's just a matter of taking a moment to be like, where is this showing up in my body? And again, because women, we're really good at capturing things, you don't even have to do it in that moment. Let's say you're dealing with your son and there's like a lot going on and you're really, really busy and you notice the thoughts, but you don't have time to figure out where it's showing up in your body. You don't have to do it right then and there.
Hmm.
As women, we are really good at capturing things and storing them. So at night, that night, if you're just kind of lying down and having a moment to yourself, you could say, oh, like earlier, I remember, this happened. And as you think about it, kind of go, wait, what do I feel? Like, and like resentment is an emotion. Like we get really hung up on like it has to be like happy, sad, like that kind of stuff. It's not, it's just a feeling. Like, what's that feeling? It's like, oh, I feel resentful. That's an emotion.
Mhm.
And then you kind of go, okay, where is it showing up in my body? And more times than not, this isn't scientifically proven, but I'll say like more times than not, I feel like people have physical ailments in that same area.
Hmm.
So a lot of people will come and tell me like, I,
Breathing.
yeah, feel like I can't breathe. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily that they have asthma, but it's just like I bet you it shows up in other areas of your life. I
Mm.
bet you like you can like go into another situation and have that same feeling. And even before you realize the thought, that feeling is already there. I
Mhm.
have women who come in and tell me that they feel it like it's like this heavy sensation in their stomach. More often than not, in my naturopathic practice, they'll have some kind of digestive issue.
Mm.
Like it's really interesting how things manifest physically and emotionally, and which is why for me when I work with women with high functioning anxiety, it's always from both perspectives. I take my
Mhm.
naturopathic doctor hat and we talk about the diet and the lifestyle and the sleeping and all the stuff that supports you on a physical and mental level.
Mhm.
And then I work on creatrix, which is helping with that thought pattern and the emotional level.
Mm. So you
Because
take.
I truly, sorry, go
Oh
ahead.
no! Oh no! Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I truly, truly think that women with high functioning anxiety need both angles.
Mm.
Like it has to be both. It has to be you treat yourself from like a
Mhm.
lifestyle, physical perspective, mental perspective, and an emotional perspective. And some of the things that I see women struggling with is we try to piecemeal it together. Again, it's that
Mhm.
I can do it all mentality and I don't need to ask for help and I'm supposed to be that strong mom. So if I can't figure this out, how am I going to figure things out for my kids? So then you try to figure it out on your own.
Mhm.
People do a lot of what I call doctor Googling. And so it's a
Yeah.
lot of like trying to piece together things on websites and things. And
Mhm.
each of those individual pieces that you're looking at probably are helpful, right? Like
Mhm.
changing the way you eat is helpful. But then
Mhm.
how many diets can you find online? Which one is the right one for you?
Mhm.
People go, oh, I'm supposed to exercise. So then you join a gym and you do yoga. And it's like, that's all, each of those things are individually good. But are those pieces the ones that's going to best serve you
Mhm.
in your current situation, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's like, oh, meditation, that's fantastic. Sure, it is. But if your thoughts don't stop, will you really sit down and meditate for 10 minutes? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to sit there and be like, I feel like crap after doing this
Mm-hmm.
because I feel so restless and all I can think about is all this stuff going on in my head. So then how do we introduce meditation in a way that works for someone with high functioning anxiety, right? It's all the pieces need to be put together in the right order, in the right fashion. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what's sometimes missing, is that we try to piecemeal everything together from Dr. Google, and it doesn't always work, even though each of the pieces individually are helpful.
Because you won't stay on that path because all the other pieces are going to eat into the good, productive things that you're doing to move forward. So you need to take a holistic approach. And to do
Yeah.
that, it's best to kind of get a professional, to help you with that, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I love the way you just put everything together. It's totally true. Like you eat really well. So you've made progress in that
Uh-huh.
direction, but you'll fall off the bandwagon because deep down you're also telling yourself that I'll never make this change. I'll never keep this up. I'm not someone who can keep up this kind of
Mm.
change. And then that's going to
Yeah.
sabotage. Like you're going to find a way to self-sabotage that dietary change that
That's
you
so true.
want.
Someone said to me a long time ago that the reason people don't change is because subconsciously you can't admit you are wrong. So you won't
Mm.
change that behavior because it's too painful to admit that you had been making all the wrong choices or, people don't want to admit that they were wrong. So
Mhm.
it's really hard to make a long-term change is
That's a
what I
really, really good way of putting it. It's true.
mm,
And then because of that deep down belief,
mhm.
you'll find ways to self-sabotage.
Yes. Because then you'll
Because
self-sabotage saying,
yeah,
well, I wasn't really wrong to begin with. Like
yes,
that's why it's really
exactly.
hard to change.
Exactly. And there's always you'll find reasons. Like it's not like
Mm,
logically speaking, people don't know they're supposed to eat fruits and vegetables, as an
yes.
example. There's nobody who actually thinks like fruits and vegetables are bad for you, right? But then
Yeah.
how many of us actually eat fruits and vegetables as much as we're supposed to, right? Like
Or water.
yeah, water. Or
Mm,
flip side, eat junk food. Everybody knows that you're not supposed to eat junk food. It's not healthy for
mhm,
you, but every one of us reaches for it, especially when we're feeling emotional or stressed out or
mhm,
whatever. So
mhm,
it's no longer about educating people on that level
mm,
because we already know it. I think we're at a point where we need to like take that one step further. And exactly like you said, it's like, why are you self-sabotaging something you already know? What is it that you believe? Is it that you don't want to be wrong?
mhm,
Why is it such a big deal for you to be wrong? What does that mean about you as a person if you're wrong? And I ask that to women, like I
mm,
like what does it mean about you if you're wrong? And then it often comes back to like, oh, it means like I'm not smart enough, or I'm not smart, or I'm uneducated, or I'm not strong enough. Like there's always something that we tell ourselves about
mm,
those thoughts. And I think getting to the root of that is what really, really helps us move forward.
mm,
Because otherwise we're working
mhm.
on a very surface layer.
Can you tell us a little bit more, Dr. Allen, about Creatrix? Because I know it's a very unique system because it's tailored towards women. So it sounds like you need the holistic approach, like you said, you need the physical, the eating healthy, all of those sort of daily routines and everything that we talk about a lot. But then also you need to get some professional help, whether that means medication, not medication, but really
Mhm.
therapy on some level, right? So Creatrix is one of those solutions for therapy.
Yeah, I would actually call Creatrix like a personal development. And the reason why I call it that is because and again, this is kind of speaking from my personal experience. Like I've gone
Mhm.
through lots and lots of different types of therapies to deal with my anxiety, my limiting
Mm,
beliefs. I've worked with a lot of different people
mhm,
from all sorts of realms. And I think the one thing that really stuck out for me for Creatrix is that one, it is designed for women. Random fun little fact here: the majority of psychological um, options, I'll say, like modalities out there, were developed by men
mm,
with the assumption that men and women work exactly the same.
mm,
And I don't actually think that's true. I think men and women are very, very different in terms of how we perceive things and how we see things and the lens with which we see the world. So it was very interesting to me that Creatrix was developed just for women. And I really appreciated that Creatrix was able to help, like I went through it for myself, help me dig out all of those underlying beliefs,
mhm,
all the emotions that came with it.
mm,
And within the span of 1 month, I was able to completely release that entire list of issues, including the thoughts and the emotions,
mm,
and they no longer affect me.
mm.
And I feel
That's awesome.
and it is, and it's also the only one out there that can give you that guarantee, right? Like I haven't found that with a lot of different other options where it will give you that guarantee.
Mhm.
Can I share a little story? I just
Uh-huh,
recently used
please.
Creatrix for myself.
Mhm.
So lots of moms are listening to this podcast. You guys have all been through the whole like transitioning from like liquids to solids, that whole
Yes.
lovely transition.
Mhm.
So Elise she was just really struggling with it. Like she
Mm.
wasn't loving it. She was not
Mhm.
understanding why we propped her up in a chair to feed her with
Mhm.
a spoon. Like she just was not getting it.
Mhm.
And I spent 2 weeks, and I don't know if this is just me, but like I tried to make her so many things and I followed
Oh my
so many
gosh, yes.
recipes
Mhm.
and it's really easy for the books. I find to just be like, oh, just
Mhm.
feed them one spoon of this. And if they don't like it, try another spoon of that. And I'm like, yes, but
Mhm.
then I had to make two different things, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
like I
Mhm.
don't have to like figure
Mhm.
out how to get all this
Yeah.
different variety for so
Mhm.
it's like, oh, they don't want to eat this. Well, then feed them something else. I'm like, well, that would assume that I already have the other thing somewhere in my house that I have to suddenly make, right? So
Yes.
you end up making all of the stuff. The
Mhm.
child eats none of it.
Nothing.
And
Yes.
it's just this, it made me so angry.
It's going to
And
continue too because my son's 2.5, and
oh gosh.
once they're in their twos, all they want is crackers. So I make him like 5 things every night. I'm like, here's pasta. I even like try to make him bacon because he'll eat it, and I'm like, well, at least it's like a protein.
Yeah.
And he just wants crackers. So like
Like
it's
it's
going to
just
continue with that. I'm
this
like, here's fruit, here's vegetables. I'm putting everything. You want to dip stuff in ketchup, whatever you want. Here's chicken nuggets. He still just wants crackers. I'm like, oh,
right. And so like there's this massive thing. And so I went through that
yeah.
whole phase being like, I'm trying to give you everything that I can think of. And
Uh-huh.
again, like it means I have to go make everything. And I
Uh-huh.
actually just gave up. Some of it I just buy now because I was like, I
Yeah.
cannot physically get this, anyways.
The pouches
Yes.
are organic. I mean,
And I was
they're
like,
good.
I just don't have, truthfully, like I was like, I just
Mhm.
cannot figure this out. And
The the
so
kids
anyway,
are
so
healthier than us with those all those ingredients. I'm not even
it's
sure what
true.
some of them are. Chia
It's true.
seed, all that.
Yes. Anyways, so then
Okay.
I'm starting to feed her. And so it got to the point where she was also getting really frustrated because she didn't understand why she was doing this. She didn't want to do
Uh-huh.
it. And my tipping point was one time I fed her something, like I was trying to give her something in a spoon. And this was already like 2 weeks, 5 times a day of trying this. And she flung her hand. It flew the spoon across the room, landed on the walls, the floors, everything. And then it landed on my dog's head. And my dog is a really furry dog. Now we're cleaning the walls, the floors, and the dog, right? And so like,
Uh-huh.
you can't just like it's a puree on a furry dog's head. You can't just wipe it. Now it's like a bath. Now it's like a whole ordeal.
Mhm.
And anyways, I got so mad. I
Mhm.
literally threw everything in the sink.
Mhm.
I picked her up, put her on my husband's lap. He was in the middle of a meeting and I like
Mhm.
could not care less. And I was just like,
Mhm.
she is yours. I am not dealing with this. And I like ran into our bedroom and I just sat there. I was so angry. And I
Mhm.
just knew at that moment, like I also know that when I react this way, she reacts as well, right?
Mhm.
Like they pick up on your energy and
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And I couldn't do it. And so
Mhm.
I got on a creatrix session for
Mm.
myself and my sister, transformologist, just kind of did the same. It's really hard for us to analyze ourselves sometimes. And so it was helpful for her to kind of help me walk through the process. And we figured out that the sentence that I kept saying to myself was, I can't do this. I
Mm.
cannot do this. Like that was, I just kept repeating that. And she's like, we're just going to create tricks that. Like
Mhm.
that's what you're stuck on right now. That's your limiting belief right now. So we create tricks. I can't do this. It's as simple as that. It wasn't. And so 20 minutes later,
Mhm.
we were done. I went to bed that night. It was like, that was our last feed of the day anyway. So I went to bed. And then the next morning, and since that morning, I haven't lost it at her once
Mm.
related to feeding because I don't have that belief I can't do this anymore. And
Mhm.
so with her, it literally spread to like she can have a horrible day with eating right now and it doesn't
Mhm.
even bother me. It doesn't phase me anymore because I'm just like, okay,
Mm.
fine. It's not just like before I logically knew the same facts as I do now. I understood that if she didn't eat one meal, her next meal she would be hungrier and then she would try and eventually she'll
Mm.
like that avocado. Like whatever it is that
Yes.
we're trying to do. Like I know that. I still know the same facts now. But because I was really stuck in that limiting belief and I had all these emotions attached to it
Mm.
because we went and did Creatrix on it, I now feel none of those things, even
Mm.
though I know the exact same facts. Like I understand that if she doesn't eat one meal, she can eat the next meal. If she doesn't eat one thing, 2 weeks later, she'll probably love it because that's just how kids are.
Mm.
And
Yes.
now I can actually apply that knowledge and it doesn't bother me.
Mm.
And that was the beauty of Creatrix for me. It's 20 minutes. That's all it took. And then
Mhm.
it was done. And now
Mhm.
and even my husband was like,
And
what happened to you? Like, you're not angry at all. And he's
yeah.
kind of laughing. He's like, is there a Creatrix for men? Because like, how do I stop getting mad at her? Like,
And
it's just,
and it's awesome because it's virtual, and it's
mhm.
also awesome because It's a form of self-care because you're saying, "I need help." You know, you're reaching out for help to, like you said, sort of your sister, transformatrix,
Transformologist, yeah.
transformologist. I was trying to get the term right there, but
That's
really
okay.
just someone to lean on and say, "I really need help." It's a, a feeling of freedom to ask for that help, and then just to take that 20 minutes to yourself and say,
Mhm.
"I'm just focusing on myself, my happiness, and it's gonna allow me to be there better for my daughter." And in reality, it was. So I'm really happy that that really changed things for you. It sounds really powerful.
I think it's again, like, exactly what you said. It was not I wasn't gonna sit there and try and figure out what it was, 'cause
Yeah.
if I understood that I felt anger, I understood that I was, like, frustrated, but underneath the anger, what was tied to
Mm.
it was the thing that I can't
Mhm.
do this,
It's
and
the limiting beliefs
yeah.
are sort of a way for us to classify those emotions that
Mhm.
are guiding us. We have a
Yeah,
lot of limiting beliefs that we're not
absolutely.
recognizing on the surface.
Yes,
I
and so
yeah,
yeah, and
I think
so
I've really taken this away from this session, almost like a therapy session for myself, because what I'm taking away from this is also understanding that those emotions that are really triggering things for us and guiding us, it's that we have limiting beliefs that we're
Mhm,
not seeing on the surface of who we
yeah,
are. We're
mhm,
hiding all of that. And until we treat those limiting beliefs that we have, that are those reoccurring thoughts about ourselves, which largely relates to us feeling insecure,
mhm,
that's the first step to really, gaining happiness overall and
mhm,
changing
mhm,
our actions long term. It's,
mhm,
like overcoming those limiting beliefs, and then we'll see the change that's going to be
mhm.
lasting.
For sure. I think what you said makes a lot of sense, and it's the courage to be able to say, "I do have a limiting belief, and I
Mm,
want it gone from my life." And that's
mm,
okay. Everybody has limiting beliefs. If you're sitting there stomping your foot and being like, "I don't have any limiting beliefs," I think that's a
yeah,
limiting belief. Like, it's
yeah,
the lack of courage to say, "You know what? Like, I'm ready to change. Like, I'm ready to
mhm,
make my life better, whatever that
mhm,
means, and how like whoever can help me do that." Right? And
mm,
it doesn't have to be necessarily the steps that I outlined today even,
mhm,
but obviously, like, the point is that you have to be able to say, "You know what? I'm ready for my life to not be like this. Like, I'm
mm,
ready for my life to feel different, and who can help me do that?"
mm. That's really important. Absolutely,
Mhm.
and who can help you do that? Because you need help, and we need to ask
Yeah.
for help as moms.
Yes, absolutely. You're not supposed to figure it all out yourself. Remember, it takes a
That's
village?
true. It
We
really
have to create the village now, but
And we need that village for ourselves
yeah.
as well
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
the best we can. I'll
For
ask
sure.
you one more question, Dr.
For
Allen.
sure.
For everyone out there listening who is feeling like they're suffering from high functioning anxiety, what action steps do you encourage them to take today to make a change towards overcoming that anxiety?
One of the things that I always tell people, and I share this a lot, is you've got to break up with your inner bully or your inner mean girl, however you want to
Mm,
however you want to call it, because that voice is the voice that's telling you that you can't make the change. That voice is telling you
mm,
that you're not worth the change. That voice is the one that's telling you you'll never do this. You failed at other things before.
mhm,
That voice is what's driving all of the behaviors
mm,
that is keeping you stuck and keeping you not feeling good and unhappy and frustrated
mm,
and not being able to make the changes that you see other people like you want to live that life but you
mhm,
think you can't, right? So that voice is the one that we need to break up with. And again, it can be a really like a good breakup. It doesn't have to be like a massive like I hate you, never talk to me again, go away. Like it's not about that, right? Like we can have a good breakup with this inner bully of ours. And so, what I'd love to do is, if you're okay with that, I'd love to offer
mhm,
your listeners that guide. I wrote a guide
mm.
that's like a 10-step process. They're very, very easily implementable in terms of kind of a step by step way to break up with your inner
Oh,
bully. So, if I
wonderful.
can. If I
Mhm.
can send that to you so you can send it to your listeners,
Yes,
that would be
please.
great.
Absolutely. We appreciate it. That sounds great. And I look
Mhm.
forward to reading it also. So for everyone out there listening, Dr. Allen's guide to breaking up with your inner bully you'll be able to find a link for that for the free guide in the show notes. And you'll also be able to find it on our social media as well with Stay Calm Mom.
Yeah. And if people are interested in kind of learning a little bit more about the things that I do or anything of like things
Yes.
along the lines of limiting beliefs and chronic emotions, I post a
Mm,
lot of this stuff on social media. So
mm,
my social media on Instagram is the Joy Avenue.
mhm.
So I'll send that to you as well, Jessica, and people can download the guide from there as
That's
well.
perfect. The Joy Avenue. That's
Mhm.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Allen, for being with us here today and so genuinely not only sharing your knowledge, but really sharing your life with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.